right, so you are going to be needing your new ratios packet, and this little slip is on the very top of it. What we're going to do is we're going to cut this out and make it just a little smaller, and we're going to glue it onto the back side of a page in our notes booklet. So I'm actually going to cut it pretty close to everything, just so that we have enough room, because it is shrunken down, but it's still just the very edge of the page, so I want to make sure we have room there. Now you'll notice mine says 7, 8, and 9. Some say 4, 5, and 6. Some say 1, 2, and 3. Just ignore these numbers. So what I did on a document was I did it on top and it 1, 2, 3, and then I just copied and pasted that 2 other times below. So that's why these ended up being 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9. So you can ignore those. We're just looking at 3 different points here. So you're actually going to open up to the ratios, rates, and unit rates page. Remember, this is a booklet that we're going to be using for the next couple units. So we're going to look at this middle tab here, and you're actually going to flip it to the back side of that middle tab. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you mine from last year that I filled out, and you can copy that as you go. And I'm just going to explain it as you are copying it in. So what I did was I cut it small, I glued it in like this, and then I glued the whole back side down. So you'll see this one says 4, 5, and 6. It does not matter. So what I did was we're looking at ratios. Ratios, I want you to kind of think of them as a fraction. Just because we just got done with the fraction unit, and I think it's a good transition in between the two, just since we're still in that mindset. So ratios are comparing different numbers or different sets of things attached to a number with each other. So we have 3 ways that we can write ratios. One is in a fraction. A fraction, like I said, is actually technically a ratio. So we can show a ratio with a fraction. We can also show them with a colon, which is 2 periods on top of each other in between. Or we can show it with the word 2 in between the 2 numbers we're comparing. So all 3 of these, you would read them 2 to 3, 2 to 3, 2 to 3. So you would read these all the same. And I know this is a fraction, so don't read it as 2/3. If it's specifically talking about a ratio, it would be 2 to 3. So we're comparing them. Words that you might see to describe ratios, either in between or in a word problem, to kind of give you a hint of here comes a ratio, or this is a ratio we're talking about. The word 2, like we have up here. The word for each, or the words for each or for every, are showing you for every 3 girls, there are 4 boys, or for each child, there are 2 parents at the park or something. Okay, so it's showing a relationship or a comparison with another number. And I do want to touch base, excuse me, this last point is saying, let's pretend we have a ratio of A to B. Okay, we don't know what that is, but we can think of it as 2 to 3, which I have written right below it here. 2 to 3 is not the same as 3 to 2. Or A to B is not the same as B to A. So think about it like a fraction. 2/3 is not the same or not equal to 3 over 2. These are 2 totally different fractions. Just because we're comparing similar things, girls and boys, boys and girls, we are comparing similar things, but the ratios are not the same. It's exactly like a fraction. 2/3 is not the same as 3 over 2. Just because they're flip-flopped or looked at it from a different angle does not mean they are the same. So if you want to pause this right now, if you need to finish up copying down the notes, you are more than welcome to. Otherwise, we are going to fill out one little tiny bit of information on the front side of this tab so that we have that ready to go. So go ahead and pause it now. Otherwise, I'm going to flip over to the front. So we have the top part up here. A ratio is a comparison of 2 numbers or quantities. It can be written as a fraction with a colon or the word 2 in between. So we already have this second part on the back side of this page. But go ahead and copy this word in here. Rates and unit rates are going to be our next few lessons after ratios. So we're going to ignore this part in the example problem down here for now. This is all you're going to fill out on this page. It's just this blank. So it's a comparison of 2 numbers or quantities of things. Okay, so let's open up our textbook now to page, no, I lost my page. to page 22 on the guided practice. So we're going to get some practice with some ratios here. So problem number 1 on page 22 is showing pens to pencils. Okay, it says write each ratio as a fraction in simplest form and then explain its meaning. So right now we're just going to practice the first half of the directions. We're not going to explain. I'll maybe talk you through what it means, but we're not going to write it out yet. So right now, it is asking you to compare pens to pencils. Think about that last part that I talked about on the back side of the page. Pens to pencils is one ratio. Please don't flip the ratio around. Pencils to pens is not the same as pens to pencils. So when we are comparing two things or when we're given two quantities of things, let's count the first one first. So we have pens. Let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 pens. Okay? 6 pens, and I'm going to choose, it says a fraction. So can't do a colon. Let's do a fraction. So I'm going to put a slash in between there. We have 6 pens. And let's count how many pencils. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So for every 6 pens, there are 8 pencils. Could be the meaning behind it. However, it says in simplest form. So that's exactly the same way or the same concept as simplifying or reducing a fraction down in simplest form. Now these are both even. So I can't leave it as that. So because they're both even, I'm going to divide each of them by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. My new ratio is 3 to 4. Okay? Now you're probably thinking, how is that any different than switching these two guys around, A to B, B to A? Here's the thing. You can have as many groups of this ratio, but the ratio in its simplest form will never change. Okay? It's just like a fraction. You can have 1/2 as a fraction, but you can also have 2/4. You can also have 3/6. That's still going to be 1/2 when everything's said and done. And when you look at the true meaning of that fraction, it's still going to be 1/2. So that's why we always write our ratios in simplest form, exactly like we would a fraction. Okay? Now, explaining its meaning would mean for every 3 pens, there are 4 pencils, would be how we would explain. So go ahead and copy that down just so you have that example in your book. And then we're going to move on to number 2. Excuse me. So number 2 is asking us to compare pennies to dimes. So let's count how many pennies. I see 1, 2, 3. I'm still in a fraction. So I'm going to make my fraction a little sideways there. So 3 pennies to dimes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 dimes. So our our ratio is 3 to 9. However, that's not in simplest form. So let's reduce that down. I can divide each of them by 3, and I get 1/3. So that's its simplest form ratio. Now, this is saying for every 1 penny, there are 3 dimes. Okay, so for every 1 penny, there are 3 dimes. For every 1 penny, there are 3 dimes. For every 1 penny, there are 3 dimes. So that's what that ratio is saying. Okay, let's look at page 23, problem 1 and 2 again. We're going to continue working with this just so we get the habit of it. So this is the same exact directions. Let's just look. It's comparing flutes to drums. Count how many flutes there are. And I see 4 flutes to 2 drums. Okay, and now, this one says write it as a fraction. So 4 to 2. However, that's not in simplest form. So we need to divide that down. Now, here's what I want you to be careful of. Normally, you could simplify this down, divide each by 2, and you'd get 2/1. And your fraction brains are going to want you to write 2. Do not do that, okay? Not for ratios. You're going to keep it like this. We need to see that 1 at the bottom to show part of the ratio, what's being compared. So for every 2 flutes, there is 1 drum. Now, if we didn't have that 1 there, we would say, yeah, 2 flutes. And we're missing the whole other part of the comparison in here. So we need to keep that 1 if it's on the bottom part of the ratio. Okay, then explain its meaning. For every 2 flutes, there is 1 drum. Let's look over here. Sandwiches to milk cartons. I see 1, 2, 3, 4 sandwiches. And milk cartons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 4 to 10. Okay, got to reduce that down or simplify it down. Divide each by 2. I get 2 fifths. In our explanation, for every 2 sandwiches, there are 5 milk cartons. Okay, so that, I like the visual pictures, and I think those are pretty easy. So we have quite a few practice with that. We are going to do problem number 3 down below, just because you are going to see quite a few of that here in a second. So number 3 says a class has 6 boys and 15 girls. What is the ratio of boys to girls? So what I always have to do is box this or circle what the actual ratio is in the problem and what they're asking me to find. Okay, because that could be different of how they displayed in the problem. Sometimes they'll switch these guys around, these 2 quantities around, and you'll have to you'll be asked to put them in the opposite ratio. So just be careful. Luckily, this is in the right order. So we have 6 boys to 15 girls. However, we can divide each of those by 3. It's not in its simplest form yet. We divide 6 by 3 and we get 2. We divide 15 by 3, we get 5. Okay, so for every 2 boys, there are 5 girls. Okay, so our ratio of boys to girls would be 2 to 5. Okay, so those are the only practice problems we're going to do now. You have 1 page in your homework, or in your packet, which is the next page here. Chapter 1, Lesson 2, Ratios, Day 1. So you are going to be doing or finding the ratio of each of the pictures down here in simplest form. So if you don't have them in simplest form, you will get some points marked off. Okay, so you have these here. And what you're going to do is you're on number 6 going to create your own ratio or items that you're going to use in ratios using 4 to 7. Now it says 2 different shapes. If you just want to stick to shapes, those are pretty easy to draw. Go right ahead. If you want to do something different and draw pictures of an item, go right ahead too. Okay, so problems 1 through 6 on this page is your homework. Let me know if you have any questions.